Well, Mr. Panda, the results are in, and it's just as I thought. A classic case of Goo tuberculosis. You'll only be able to play Goo Tuber until the disease runs its course. Wait, that's it? That doesn't sound so bad. I haven't seen my family in months. There are multiple missing person reports filed about me. I've lost so many matches that the devs literally had to make a new rank below C-. This is the most fun weapon I've played in my entire life. When you think of Splatoon's Charger class, what weapons tend to come to mind? Perhaps the Splat Charger and E-Leader with their ability to rip through foes from across the stage? Or maybe the Squiffer or Bamboozler, which use their blindingly fast mobility to maneuver around the map all while taking out enemies left and right. Mayhaps the Snipe Rider and its meta-defining ability to support its team with insane turf and special output. And the Goo Tuber with its... Yeah, Goo Tuber is a weapon with quite the unfortunate reputation. Despite the weapon seeing numerous drastic buffs throughout all 5 years of its existence, it still holds its place on the Mount Rushmore of Splatoon meme weapons, right up there with Undercover Brella, Clash Blaster, and Neo Sploosh. But as someone who is contractually obligated to speak positively of all chargers or else face execution by firing squad, what are my thoughts on the Goo Tuber? I would die for this thing. No, genuinely, I think this might be my second favorite charger, behind, well, my wife. Now, I don't give it this sort of high praise to make myself out to be some Goo Tuber hipster who has always loved this weapon since the very beginning. In fact, going back to this thing's introduction in July 2017 with the launch of Splatoon 2, it, left much to be desired. To put it into perspective, let's compare it to the standard Splat Charger, to which it had significantly less range, which forced this weapon into closer fights, but also a slower charge speed, which all but ensured this weapon would not be able to outpace its peers in terms of damage and lose most one-on-one engagements. Now, surely if it had this many drawbacks, it must have had some crazy broken gimmick that just made this thing an unstoppable force. It could hold its charge in the ink for 5 seconds instead of 1 second. Yay. Okay, and admittedly, this was quite the fun mechanic to make use of. It was actually sorta cool to charge up a shot, swim all the way to your target and... Swim all the way to your target and... Yeah, it was sorta tricky to get used to, but when pulled off well, making use of Goo Tuber's signature gimmick to catch opponents off guard actually felt really nice. Unfortunately though, the use cases for the extended charge hold mechanic were just far too niche to make up for the plethora of other drawbacks. Goo Tuber at this point in time felt more like a mere afterthought, a husk of a weapon introduced only to put emphasis on Splatoon 2's shiny new charge hold ability. But the other two chargers in the game at launch already did a perfectly fine job at showcasing it, so did Goo Tuber really even need to exist? The only people who were playing Goo at this point were Squiffer mains who didn't have their weapon in the game yet, and masochists. Speaking of, Classic Squiffer was reintroduced to the game only about a month after launch, in which it proceeded to completely outclass the Goo Tuber in almost every conceivable way. This poor newcomer was effectively assassinated less than a month into its life. And just to pile more dirt on the grave, Squiffer would go on to gain its incredible ability to charge at full speed while airborne. It was because of this that, despite the two weapons having comparable strafing speed, Squiffer would maintain its title as the mobility charger, and Goo Tuber, well, it would be left in the dust. Rest in peace, little goober. Fortunately, the Splatoon devs were fluent in the dark arts of necromancy, and would try to do anything they could to bring Goo Tuber back to life. Over the course of many patches, attempts would be made to improve Goo Tuber's overall fluidity. It is a charger based around mobility, after all. Shortening the time it takes to transform between Kid and Squid, allowing Goo Tuber to store partial charges, giving it better paint output, all buffs given in a desperate attempt to give this weapon something, anything to allow it to see some semblance of use. But it just wasn't enough. But fortunately for Goo Tuber, the devs had an ace up their sleeve. An emergency plan. A way to ensure that the Goo Tuber would finally be played. Performance-enhancing drugs. Yeah, this was a wild buff. Goo Tuber suddenly gaining the ability to one-shot before a full charge has to have been one of the boldest design choices I have ever seen the devs make. I mean, chargers abusing damage up in Splatoon 1 was so broken it had to be removed from the game entirely, and now they're just giving it to the Goo Tuber for free? Surely this would break the game beyond repair, right? Right? Yeah, these changes, especially the ability to one-shot before a full charge, did serve to get a few eyes on the weapon, and it did sort of help with some of Goo Tuber's main issues, but none of this was really enough to get it to see much use over something like Squiffer, which was overall more snappy and fluid to play. And to this very day, that remains the general consensus on Goo Tuber. But I heavily disagree. Well, sort of. I sort of disagree. I agree that from a viability standpoint, Goo Tuber struggles hard. I'm not a competitive player, and even I can see that. Pretty much everything that Goo Tuber is even remotely good at is just done better by, well, any other charger really. Hence why you unfortunately never see it picked at any level of play. But I feel like too many people are quick to write off a weapon even casually just because it can't be used at the very top level. Now I probably won't hunt you down for not playing Goo Tuber, but what I will say is that it is some of the most dumb fun you'll have playing Splatoon. Even if your win-loss rate takes a complete nosedive, it is worth it. And plus, this weapon really does have a unique identity of its own beyond just clear and spin Squiffer. While it is true both Squiffer and Goo Tubers are chargers with a high focus on mobility, it's a little more nuanced than that. Whereas Squiffer uses its trademark ground mobility to strafe and jump around the map, whipping out shots left and right, Goo Tuber uses its swim-based mobility to play more stealthily and unpredictably. Thanks to the traits we briefly went over earlier, Goo Tuber can take positions and move in ways that other chargers could only dream of. See, chargers normally have to take sort of a gamble when repositioning. They either have to drop their charge entirely before moving, which leaves them all but defenseless if caught off guard, or they have to chain together charge holds to reach their new destination, making their movements super obvious. Yeah, having to pop out of the ink every second to reveal your glowy laser isn't exactly the most inconspicuous method of traveling. Goo Tuber, on the other hand, doesn't have to worry about this as much. Because of its extended charge hold, Goo Tuber can afford to sneakily take large distances without being noticed and hit them where it hurts. And because it can transition from swim to kid form in the near blink of an eye, it's almost impossible for the enemy to react if they don't catch you swimming up in time. It's like how a rattlesnake attacks its prey in the wild, except instead of a rattlesnake, it's a gas siphon pump. Which, side tangent, if I had a nickel for every time we had a custom brand charger class weapon based off of a gas pumping mechanism that deals 40 damage tap shots and 180 damage maximum, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Back to Goober's treasure trove of gimmicks. We've only touched on part of it. This weapon's ability to pop in and out of the ink as fast as it does is massively underrated. It is a near seamless transition. Other chargers feel laggy compared to Goo Tuber. I mean, it lets you do this. What more could you want in a weapon? Seriously though, aside from just feeling really nice and looking kinda funny, what exactly makes this trait so beneficial for Goo Tuber? Well, by quickly popping out of the ink while changing direction and swim form, Goo Tuber is actually able to keep nearly all of the momentum that would normally be lost otherwise. This tactic is called main strafing, and it's a tech used by a lot of weapons in the shooter class to keep up their speed as they swim in different directions. And that's exactly what it does here for Goo Tuber. Which, again, another side tangent, Goober is pretty much the only non-shooter weapon to consistently make use of main strafing. Everything else is either too slow or just straight up can't do it. Just another thing that makes this weapon unique. Anyway, when used to its fullest extent, Goo Tuber's main strafing can make it a slippery weapon to pin down. Since you can change directions on a dime all while remaining at top speed, weapons that need precise aim to land hits will really struggle to take you out as you zigzag across the map. This is just such a great mix-up tool to use in pretty much all combat situations. But now let's combine that with one of Goo Tuber's other more distinct traits, its ability to store partial charges. And it would be unique to the Goo Tuber if someone didn't steal it, Nautilus. Poser. And this is just the icing on the cake. Not only can you pull a Fox McCloud and dash dance across the stage, you can also charge up a deadly mid-range one-shot while you're at it. But just when you thought it couldn't get any cooler, it somehow does. The introduction of Squid Roll and Squid Surge into this thing's toolkit are like divine intervention from Nogami himself. Yeah, you can use it as an evasive maneuver or to repel enemy attacks, blah blah blah, boring. Real goobers use Squid Roll to perform sick mid-air wall kick snipes. Is it practical? Absolutely not. Will it result in an untimely death? With near certainty. Knowing this information, will I still try to perform trick shots in the middle of a ranked match and cost my team the win? You bet your bottom dollar. No, but seriously, given that Goo Tuber can hold a charge for as long as it can, making use of Squid Roll and especially Squid Surge feel better here than on any other charger, even more than my beloved Squiffer. But the extended charge hold mechanic doesn't just help in repositioning. In fact, I'd say it's even better when it comes to holding down an area. Simply sink in the ink to conceal the retina-obliterating glow that would normally give away your position when peeking from behind a wall or from atop a ledge. Charge hold running out? Use that lickety-split kid-to-squid transition to take a quick breath and reset the timer. You can use this technique to shark in an area for as long as you want, honestly. In this state, you're practically undetectable, aside from, you know, the literal target put on your back. But from below and atop ledges, you're invisible, baby. All of my constant beating you over the head with Goo Tuber propaganda thus far, and yet we have barely touched on what is quite possibly my favorite aspect of this thing. And weirdly enough, it has almost nothing to do with Goo Tuber's whole charge hold shtick. I'm talking, of course, about Goo Tuber's unique ability to splat with partial charges. Okay, so yeah, we technically did touch on it briefly earlier, but I want to talk about this some more, because the amount of depth this adds to Goo Tuber cannot be understated. Starting at roughly 70% of a full charge, indicated by the first first charge ring, Goo Tuber can deal more than 100 damage and secure a splat. This does mean that you won't be at your maximum range, but that is exactly what makes this so cool. This gives the player the choice of sacrificing range to actually be able to fight closer fights, while also allowing them to take the time to fully charge and play Goo Tuber a little more like a traditional sniper. Granted, this is sort of a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none sort of deal, where Goo Tuber's 70% charge is slower and has less range than Squiffer's full charge, and Goo Tuber's full charge only gives you, like, Bamboozler range. But still, it's the fact that Goo Tuber can effectively switch between two different playstyles on the fly, so I absolutely love this nonetheless. This super dynamic playstyle makes Goo Tuber almost feel like the Swiss Army knife of chargers. It can do anything with astounding levels of mediocrity. Me too, Goo Tuber. Me too. And plus, all weapons have weaknesses except 52 Gal, and those weaknesses are typically made up for by the weapon's kit. So what does Goo Tuber have? Well, I actually want to start by talking about what happened with its kits back in Splatoon 2, because what would end up happening later on is kind of hilarious. Well, hilarious to people who don't go outside, results may vary. So the basic Goo Tuber had... Oh, so close. Yeah, Suction Bomb on this thing was super promising, as it offered a nice poking, area denial, and painting tool all in one, but Splashdown sorta kills it. Don't get me wrong, I'm Splashdown's strongest soldier, but putting the special that always dies with a main weapon that has this many weaknesses that need to be accounted for was not the best idea, to put it lightly. And it certainly didn't help that the classic Squiffer had, you know, a contender for best special in the game. Fortunately, custom Goo Tuber would release roughly a half a year later, and would give Goo Tuber a kit that did account for its issues: Curling Bomb and Inkjet. Curling Bomb, while certainly a predictable movement option, did at least synergize well with what Goo Tuber does best, repositioning on the fly. Curling presented many creative ways of going about combat scenarios, which is what I think makes Goo Tuber so fun in the first place. I was a huge fan of this main sub combo. And Inkjet was absolutely ingenious to add to this thing, bolstering its flexibility to even higher heights. You could charge up to 70% to take out close opponents, fully charge to take out mid-range opponents, and use Inkjet to take out the longer range opponents that so often oppress Goo Tuber. I've compared this weapon to a Swiss Army knife before, but Inkjet was what made its toolkit feel complete. There was truly an answer to every situation. Asterisk. Even with a pretty solid kit, you still rarely ever saw this weapon. But it did breathe at least a little bit of life into the Goo Tuber after it had its kneecaps broken by Squiffer earlier on. That was until Squiffer visited Goo Tuber in the hospital, pushed it down the stairs, took the best parts of both of its kits for itself to make the fresh Squiffer, and left without saying a word. That's right, the faster splatting, faster moving Squiffer, which mind you already had two amazing kits, yet again robbed the Goo Tuber of one of its very few redeeming qualities, sealing its doom for good for the remainder of Splatoon 2. Poor guy just can't catch a break. So what would become of the Squiffer Goo Tuber rivalry in Splatoon 3? Well, Squiffer would be given the same kit it's always had, point sensor for the sub, and some flavor of bubbler as the special. So what about Goo Tuber? Would they give it Suction Bomb and Reef Slider as a sort of callback to the original? Or maybe they would give it Curling Bomb and Inkjet like they did the custom one? Or maybe they would do a combination of the two and... Torpedo Tentamissiles. Torpedo Tentamissiles. Goo Tuber, the meme weapon that nobody ever took seriously, the weapon everybody laughed at, the weapon that always got rejected from prom in high school, got torpedo and tentamissiles. I could not have written a better comeback story myself. This kit was literally so unexpectedly good that there was a brief time just before Splatoon 3's release that some people thought that Goo Tuber might finally be able to compete with Squiffer. It was a glorious 2 minutes before the mass hysteria went away. Yeah, even with an absolutely busted kit, the issues with Goo Tuber as a main weapon still kept it from seeing use over Squiffer. But regardless, this kit was still incredible. Torpedo was a dream come true on this thing, really fleshing out what the weapon can do. Yeah, Curling Bomb was certainly nice for mobility back in Splatoon 2, but Torpedo here really bolsters what Goo Tuber can do in combat. And weirdly, it's not even due to the main intended use of the sub. Rolling the Torpedo on the ground to detonate it prematurely provides some fantastic combo potential. If you manage to hit an opponent with a direct blast, they're susceptible to being splatted by just one tap shot from the main weapon, and even an indirect is still quite the softening blow. This combo is great for both setting up fights you want to push, as well as defending yourself up close in the event of an emergency. And all of this comes from a mere secondary feature of the Torpedo. That's not to completely dismiss the intended use of the sub. The location and poking at long range is always nice for when you want to proceed into uncharted territory. Shoot, Goo Tuber's superb repositioning capabilities mean that it's actually not half bad at capitalizing on the predictable movement of weapons that can't shoot the torpedo down. It's a cool little bit of synergy I don't see talked about too often. Then again, I don't see Goo Tuber talked about that often either. As for the special, do I even need to explain Tenta Missiles? It's far from being the definitive best special like it once was, but it still has basically everything you could want. Locates enemies, global range, pesters backlines, forces displacement on objectives, cooks breakfast for you, free ink tank refill, helps to get the team in. Is there anything it can't do? Actually, going back to the pre-nerf highly spammable Tenta Missiles, Goo Tuber's insane ability to turf the ground with its tap shots meant that it could farm lots of these, even as a charger at 200p. Some people legitimately used to try to make Goo Tuber work in higher levels of play exclusively because of its high missile output. Which, as cool as it was to see Goo Tuber seeing some more use, it honestly felt like it was for all the wrong reasons. Missile spam isn't really fun to watch or fun to play. Thankfully, missiles have been toned back considerably and are now in a much healthier spot, all while still feeling like a nice strong fit for Goo Tuber. I think Goo Tuber's kit has been handled very well after many unfortunate years of abuse, and it definitely served to get more eyes on this underrated weapon. Amongst the many amazing comments I got on my last few videos, I got a surprising amount of Goo Tuber fans saying that they love the weapon and couldn't wait for it to be covered. Truly a heartwarming sight to see so many of my fellow goobers gathered in one place. Unfortunately though, despite its cult following, Goo Tuber still remains one of, if not the most hated weapons in Splatoon history. Which is precisely why during Splatoon 3's highly anticipated anniversary update, Nogami said, "Make another one!" That's right baby, it's time for Goo Tuber 2, Electric Googaloo. This time in blue. I know what you're probably thinking to yourself. With the vanilla Goo Tuber's kit being this good, surely they can't possibly make a stronger one. And you'd be right, this kit is considerably weaker, but where it lacks in power, it more than makes up for in fun factor. Like a lot of the kits we got in Drizzle Season 2023, Blue Tuber here was certainly an acquired taste. Well, the sub-weapon was fairly unanimously liked. Like I said, I was actually quite fond of Torpedo on the vanilla kit, but Fizzy Bomb is somehow even better. In fact, I'd argue that it's quite possibly the best sub-weapon for Goo Tuber. Like Torpedo, Fizzy Bombs can be used as a combo tool for the main gun, though it isn't quite as effective in a pinch. Even if hit from a direct uncharged Fizzy Bomb, you're still 10 damage shy of being able to seal the deal with a single tap shot. Though this can still be a decently reliable combo tool if you're willing to charge the weapon slightly. Not to mention, this tiny lack of damage is more than made up for by pretty much everything else offered by this sub. Shaking the Fizzy Bombs to throw them further is where they start to mesh a bit better with what Goo Tuber likes to do. They detonate so quickly upon landing and explode so many times that they are very difficult to react to, which works with the main weapon's tendency to ambush. Especially when it comes to dealing with long range, fizzies are just about the best you'll get. A lot of backline weapons tend to be on the slow and heavy side, meaning that it's even harder for them to react upon seeing a fully charged Mountain Goo Sploda can sent their way. Yeah, you're not seeing them for at least 3 to 5 business days. But here is where Fizzy truly takes the cake in my eyes. On top of allowing for combos, Fizzy also boosts Goo Tuber's ability to stay on the move, which, if you've been paying attention so far, can't blame you if you haven't, is massive for Goo Tuber's playstyle. Acting almost as a sort of spiritual successor to the Curling Bomb Goo Tuber from back in Splatoon 2, even an unshaken Fizzy Bomb covers a lot of distance in a short time, which allows for both getting into and out of certain positions with the utmost efficiency. Though it leaves your movement very predictable, and the trail it leaves is very thin, meaning it's easy to stub your toe in enemy ink and get caught. Not quite a get-out-of-jail-free card, but an excellent tool to have nonetheless. Fizzy on Goo Tuber is a prime example of kit synergy. It's a rare instance in which a sub-weapon does exactly what a sub-weapon should do, exemplifying the main weapon's strengths whilst counteracting its weaknesses. The main point of contention with its kit, however, lies in the special. Ultra Stamp by itself is already fairly polarizing. It's one of those sort of risk-reward specials where, if it's used well, the payoff can be literally game-changing, but if not, it's a soul-crushing 7-second journey back to spawn for you. The special tends to work better on faster, more aggro weapons that like to fight up close who are capable of both getting into position to activate it as well as following up once it's over. And up until that point, pretty much every weapon to have this special in Splatoon 3 fell into this category. So what are you doing here? Yeah, at a glance, it's very easy to see why people were so quick to completely dismiss Custom Goo based on the special alone. It's a bizarre crossing of a somewhat inconsistent mid-range sniper with a notoriously inconsistent aggro special. One of the main reasons people regard Ultra Stamp as such a terrible special is the fact that it moves predictably and is vulnerable from all sides, including the front. Sort of. It's very easy to just swim out of the way if you see a stamp charging at you head on and take it out. So how do you mitigate this weakness? Well, you position yourself to use it at an unexpected angle, which just so happens to be the Goo Tuber's bread and butter. Does it always work? Absolutely not. But the few times it does work and you manage to cheese out a triple or a quad, more than make up for it. It's stupid and I love it. Pretty much sums up my thoughts on the Goo Tuber as a whole, to be completely honest with you. And in a weird turn of events, Ultra Stamp sort of actually covers some of Goo Tuber's weaknesses. Sort of. The stamp mode can be activated quickly to aid the user in urgent close quarters combat, and the throw mode can be used to deter those pesky backlines that Goo Tuber so often get shredded by. Again, it doesn't always work, but that's the fun of it. You know, like gambling. Custom Goo Tuber is among my absolute favorite kits in the entire franchise, despite how admittedly not great it is. Still, it has a sub that strengthens the strengths and mitigates the weaknesses of the main. The main and special both manage to bring out the best in each other, and it does all of this to create a well-rounded, highly fun, highly interactive experience. It's not often you see a kit as casually fun as this one is. I understand that the vanilla one is probably better from a competitive standpoint thanks to Tentamissiles, which... Goo Tuber? Competitive? Okay. But I just have so much more fun beating people with hammers using the custom one. Honestly though, I'm just beyond happy that Goo Tuber is finally getting the treatment it deserves. Solid buffs, 2 great kits, and now this weapon is just some of the most fun you'll have while playing this game. Goo Tuber may never be a top tier, or a mid tier, or a low tier, or basically anything other than the absolute bottom tier, and it may never win any tournaments. But I and the 3 other people on the planet that main this weapon will still keep playing it regardless. Plus, it feels good to win with the underdog sometimes.